Hey guys, what's going on? Peety here. Today we're going to be comparing all the bombers against each other, and I got a little speed race at the very end. So let's get into it here. Starting off looking at Henry H. Arnold. So this officer is applicable to any one of these. I'm going to have some calculations and stuff up when we get into the specific bombers, and this calculations aren't going to go into it, just in case you don't pick them up. But you can do that for yourself afterwards. So yeah, all right, moving into it with the B-25. So this B-25 Mitchell, it's unlocked at level 10 munitions factory. It's got decent stats across the board, and it even has a little skin to it. But overall, it's just a pretty basic bomber. I would say I've seen people run these before, but really the building damage isn't that much. Let's start with this. So when you're picking out a bomber, each one is built specifically for different things. Like some have a lot of attack versus armor and are really fast. Some have attack versus ship. Some have attack versus building. Typically how I play is I farm a lot. So like I'll get into like day 2 or day 3 and I'll just come run over people's bases and take their cities and then get cities for my allies and stuff and support the main armies while they're pushing. And if somebody shows up and they have a bunch of flak, I typically don't push that. I won't try to take somebody out unless I see an opportunity, which is pretty rare for me, mainly because I run Avros and they're pretty slow. But it depends on what kind of Air Force you want to play. I see a lot of guys running Mitsubishis because they're fast, and so just kind of keep that in mind here when I'm going through. I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. So the Mitchells, there doesn't really specialize. It's like a jack of all trades. I'm just going to say that this one is probably a no-go. We'll look at the officer here for a second. This is Curtis. He applies to your B-25s. And here's your B-25s with Curtis added. So you can see a good 1100 damage to armor. You're about to see when we get into the next bombers that this guy's really nothing to write home about. So moving on to strat bombers. So these are one of the only bombers that you can get through the League City. It's level 3 League City. You can start pumping these out, which isn't too long. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out if you can get up a level 10 city or a level 3 League City first. But I think they're both pretty similar. About 18 to 24 hours is how long it would take. But these are very strong. The officer is Mariah here. And then Mariah's bonuses to the strat are listed right here. So a huge 2,000 building damage. And then another thing to notice is that 12,000 HP. That's pretty nuts. And for armor, still does a good amount, 1,000. And ship, 860. If you're fighting ships, I would not recommend it because there's a lot better in the list, as we'll see. So moving along, we have the Douglas Dauntless. This thing is an armor killer. As you can tell, it's pretty quick, as we'll see later. Looking at Norman Jack, those are the bonuses he gives you. And then moving into buffed, he gets 2125 armor and 8652 HP. So a lot more damage versus armor compared to the strats and everything we've seen so far. We'll see if anything could top it. We got the Mitsubishi here. Fan favorite. A lot of elite players use this guy because he's so quick. Does a lot of damage versus ship. Here's the officer for him. And then here's the buffs applied. So you can see 2470 versus ship and 10,000 HP. It's pretty strong. And you still have that 1200 versus armor. And then a 690 versus building, which is not horrible. But compared to an Avro or a Strat, it's pretty slow. It's like 3 times as slow. But moving on. We have the Junkers. It's another armor killer. That building damage is atrocious. But if you're going to run like Stugs or something with your Air Force, you can kind of make it happen. Here's the officer for him, Warner. And then here it is buffed. So 1200 vehicle, 1750 armor, 6420 HP. So very low HP here. Like if you're trying to push into armor or even vehicles, which would be like M40s, you're gonna need the HP to tank the flak and everything like that. So this, even though it looks cool, it's one of my favorite looking units. I think you have to pass on the junker. So next up is my baby, the Avro Lancaster. So these stats you see is upgraded because I run it currently. But as we move on, we'll see that I have the unupgraded stats in like 2 slides. So Arthur Harris is the guy you want to get, and then here's the buffs. So I had to get on my ult to get these buffs. But you're looking at 575 to vehicle, 920 to armor, 1812 to building, 8567 HP. So for me personally, I look at between these and the strats. The strats have more damage to building, and they have more HP. However, the Avros are a lot cheaper, and it keeps my hands out of the LC, at least until I get to jets. So that's typically why I run them. You can kind of make a call for yourself. If you want to be able to, I don't know. It just depends on how you like managing your League City. For me, every time, like, people just queue up M40s and they're just always constantly going. And I hate canceling those to get strats going. I mean, you can obviously communicate and say, I need my army. But, I don't know. I've been leaning back and forth between the two for a while now. So, our last and final bomber here is the Bristol Beaufort. We see a lot of versus ship here. And here's the officer. And then here are the stats buffed. So versus ship 1875 is really pretty strong. Let me see. I have the pleasure of going back on my slides. So the Mitsubishi actually has 2470 versus ship with 10,000 HP. So there's really no reason to run this Bristol. Yeah, except for the Mitsubishi's being an LC troop. But I guess if you want to stay out of the LC and you're still looking to kill ships, this is a good alternative. But without further ado, let's move into the speed test. Alright guys, so now we're going to get into the speed race portion of it. Let's look at our contenders. Up top, we have the Scout aircraft. We have no additional buffs on any of these guys. I took off all the officers that are applicable. So we got our Scout aircraft up top. Next we have our jet fighter. We have our large transport. We have our Bristol Beaufort. We got our transport aircraft. We got a Junker Ju-87. Our normal bomber. Our Douglas. Our Mitsubishi. Our strategic bomber. And our Avrocaster. Now, I'm also running tanker this field, so there's going to be no additional speed bonuses given by airmen. But this is just basically going to be a bone stock race to see what's going on here. So, without further ado, I'm going to chart these guys way over here so they kind of stay in a straight line. All right, we're going to go right here. Go! And they're off. All right, pulling out to an immediate... That's kind of funny. Pulling out to an immediate head start here is the jet, as expected. And man, these bombers are kind of quick. Okay, I see the gigs are kind of hanging back here. Let me get rid of all these little things. Gigs are hanging back, so are the transports and the strats. But the jets and the scouts keeping up with the jet. What in the world? Is that scout as fast? It's like 7.5. 6.7. Wait, what? 7.7. Yeah, the jets. Wow, the scout's actually pretty quick. So we're looking at this. We're seeing strats here. They're falling behind. They're kind of sitting back with our two transports. Mitsubishis are pulling ahead, and the Bristols are not too far behind. Douglas is in second. Avro's in third, paired with the bomber and the Junker.
So we'll give this a little more time to develop. Maybe one of these guys will hit the afterburner or something and do something shocking. But I think we can kind of tell already what's going on here. Yeah, it's looking good. So basically, the knowledge that we have on these bombers already is that these Mitsubishis are really good for fighting tanks. You can see they have a lot of versatile armor, and obviously they're better for ships, but they're a lot faster, and when they're buffed, they can outrun scouts. But that's saying if the scouts aren't buffed. So that's kind of why people use them, because they're a little bit faster than these Avros. The Avros kind of hang back. They're a little bit slower. The Douglases, that gives a lot of versus armor. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm doing this race before I did any research on these bombers, and this might be kind of interesting. Like, this guy is just as fast as the Mitsubishi. He's a little bit slower, and he's got a lot more armor. So this is kind of wild. What about the Bristol over here? What's he rocking? A lot of versus ship, okay. And the little junkers, a lot of versus armor, but a little bit slower, about the same speed as the Avro. So yeah, guys, this is, like I said, completely unbuffed. This isn't airman. So any airman buffs that you guys see that give additional speed bonus would apply. I don't believe there's any there isn't any individual ones just for bombers or whatever, like specific bombers. It's either all or none in that tech. So this is pretty much what you're gonna get. It looks like Mitsubishi's the fastest. Bristol is coming in second here. Very, very close second, followed by Douglas. And then you have your medium. So I'd give these guys all the fast. I put them in the fast tier. All these guys are the medium tier. And then your strats are pretty dang slow. But if you're planning on running like gigs and flak, you're going to have to wait on those to show up anyways. So there's no real reason to not use a strat here. I mean, I guess trying to bomb AA, but that's really the only reason. Wow, pretty interesting stuff. Okay, guys, well, that's it for the race. So if I have anything else coming after this, it's going to come now.
Alright guys, so just as a final wrap up here, we looked at all the different bombers, and I'm just going to give you my opinions and what I would choose. Honestly, looking at the raw stats, I'm kind of like prone to switch it up to strats. I mean, typically running airmen, you have your flat, you need jets, you need bombers, and then you also need some flak, or otherwise you can get into some trouble. Like say you're running 30 jets, and two other enemies come up with 60 jets, like total. You need something to be able to defend against that, and 30 jets won't cut it. So you have a gig with your infantry and then also your flak, and you can drop those to protect yourself against big air armies. So having strats be able to hang back with your gigs is pretty cool. Now I know that in global fields, whenever you're trying to like attack flak, you need to have a lot of speed, and the B29 strat is slow as hell. But I don't know. I think the HP kind of helps you pull through, and I've seen them get up to like 17, 18, 19,000 HP, fully upgraded with all the officers maxed and all the battlefield tech. So it's kind of up to you. I mean, for me, like the Mitsubishis are the second contender if you don't mind going into the LC and you want to have a fast vehicle killing, armor killing troop. But I think just kill buildings too slow for me, and you're gonna have to resupply a lot. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you appreciate this background here. And yeah, thank you for the recommendation to do this video. If you guys have any more, please drop it down in the comments, and I'll do my best to do it. All right, Peety out.